Chapter 34 Abhedananda in America, the last phase. Swami Abhedananda, accompanied by Swami Paramahansa, returned to New York on December 22nd, 1906. The young Swami Paramahansa had met him at Colombo, which is the former Sri Lanka, and followed him throughout his entire Indian tour. We have seen that during the last 10 years, the Vedanta movement had spread widely in America. Before the end of the first decade of the 20th century, it had been deeply rooted into the soil. This was a remarkable achievement. From Texas to Canada and from the Atlantic to the Pacific, there was hardly any region or state from where the New York Vedanta Society did not receive any inquiry or requisition of its publications. More than a lakh of leaflets had gone forth from the center. In the first instance, Swami Abhedananda came to New York from England towards the end of 1897, and from that very day, the Vedanta movement obtained an importance which began to increase every year, creating widespread interest. Recording the story of his ministry and apostleship in America during the first phase of his stay there, Swami Abhedananda has said, "I traveled extensively all through the United States, Canada, Alaska, and Mexico, and delivered addresses on various aspects of Vedanta philosophy in all the principal cities of those countries." The history of the activities of the Vedanta Society during this period is also the story of his own life as the Hindu preacher and the successor of Swami Vivekananda. But here it should be noted that the activities of the society did not remain confined to the preaching of Vedanta alone. It also looked after the Indian students who were then in America, studying in different colleges and universities. We learn from an account given in the Vedanta Bulletin of August 1906 that it was during the first decade of this 20th century that a large number of Indian students had been in America for higher education, and most of them received considerable help from the society. Abhedananda had two major achievements during the first 10 years of his preaching career. Firstly, he was able to establish the Vedanta philosophy as a living faith among the Americans, and secondly, he held aloft the banner of Swami Vivekananda very efficiently. It has been rightly observed by one of his American disciples who said, "If you can imagine a St. Paul without the fanfare and emotionalism of his ministry, a St. Paul without the dronalics of a colorful and fervent apostleship, holding to the determined issue of placing self-revealed truth firmly and persistently in the hearts of men, you will then have some small conception of the immediacy and the reality and the message of Vedanta as taught by Swami Abhedananda in the early years of the 20th century." As regards the development of the society during the early stage, here it should be mentioned that a notable work was also done by Swami Turiyananda, who came to America with Swami Vivekananda in the year 1899. Turiyananda, or Hari Maharaj, as he was known in the order, did some excellent service. In the estimation of Vivekananda himself, Turiyananda was the embodiment of the teachings of Vedanta. He had a great love and regards for Vivekananda and was senior to him by 1 year. Essentially being a sannyasin or contemplative, Turiyananda at first was not willing to go to the West. But when Vivekananda made a touching appeal to him to extend his help in the work of preaching Vedanta, Turiyananda instantly agreed and accompanied Vivekananda to America in June 1899. They came to New York via London in the month of August. Turiyananda was more or less afraid of his lack of efficiency in Vedanta work and hesitated to come forward to lecture, for lecturing was not likely in his nature. But Vivekananda told him, "You need not lecture. Just live the life and forget India. And Turiyananda was perhaps the only person who achieved considerable appreciation without giving a single lecture. His main asset was his intense spiritual life. That was his outstanding characteristic also. It was Swami Turiyananda who founded the Shanti Ashrama, or the Peace Retreat. It was the first Vedanta retreat in the West, and which afterwards became one of the patent spiritual centers in America. The history of the Peace Retreat is as follows. After working for nearly 1 year in New York and Montclair, New Jersey, Swami Turiyananda went, at the request of Swami Vivekananda, to California in July 1900 to start a Vedanta retreat in the San Antonio Valley, where a homestead of 160 acres had been donated by a member of the Vedanta Society of New York. At first, the Swami went to Los Angeles and stayed for a few weeks. Even in such a short period, he became a great influence, and there was a request to him to stay and work there. But this the Swami could not do. From Los Angeles, he went to San Francisco, where he met with an enthusiastic reception. After a few days, he left for the San Antonio Valley on 3rd August 1900. It was here that Turiyananda founded the Shanti Ashrama with a dozen students. Initially, it was a completely isolated piece of hilly land, far away from human habitation and 50 miles from the nearest railway station. There was only one old log cabin, and hence no fit accommodation for sleeping. There was no water nearby, and it had to be brought from a long distance. Even Turiyananda felt disheartened at the situation, and the hardship was too much for the students. But the inspiration of the Swami and the ideals of Vedanta gave them courage and strength. It was against such a bleak background that Vivekananda made a great experiment through the agency of his brother disciple. An experiment which was unique in conception and successful in execution. Gradually, the place was made habitable, and the students applied themselves to intense spiritual pursuits. Swami Turiyananda worked only for 2 years at Shanti Ashrama, and the place was more or less his handiwork. It actually came into being in August 1900 with only 12 students. It should be noted here that the land was a gift from Miss Minnie C. Book, a student of Swami Abhedananda in New York. All records go to show that the spiritual force generated by the teacher and students of the Shanti Ashrama of those days continued for a long time to hover over the Vedanta centers in California, putting faith and hope and energy into every soul and leading them to greater and greater advancement every day. In short, what Abhedananda achieved by lecture, Turiyananda achieved the same thing by his intense silent teaching. After Turiyananda had left for India, Abhedananda occasionally visited the Peace Retreat and looked after its works. Now, to return to our narration of Abhedananda's activities after his return from India, the next 15 years of his work in America was mainly confined to the task of expansion and consolidation. He returned to New York en route to London, where he stayed for 2 weeks and met many of his English friends who were deeply interested in Vedanta and who wished to have a center established in London. And a center was established there through the untiring efforts of Abhedananda. In his subsequent visits to England, he helped considerably in the matter of development of the London Vedanta Society. According to the report which appeared in the True Observer magazine in London, Abhedananda, while inaugurating the London Vedanta Society, delivered an excellent lecture on the Vedanta philosophy. In the course of that lecture, he said, "Vedanta is the name of the system of philosophy which has been in existence in India from the Vedic period, at least 2,000 years before Christ. It teaches that the truth is one and universal, but that the means of attaining it are many. and it gives a scientific foundation to the universal religion, which is free from doctrine, dogmas, and needs. Vedanta, in fact, may be said to embrace all the special religions of the world, and its universal character is emphasized by the fact that it is not built around any particular personality. The paper described the Swami as belonging to the order of Sannyasin, the oldest order of spiritual teachers in India, and his master Ramakrishna, whose life and teachings have been published in this country by Max Mueller. The 13th anniversary of the Vedanta Society and celebration of the birthday of Swami Vivekananda was held at the Society House on January 14, 1907. Swami Abhedananda conducted the meditation. Swami Paramahansa recounted incidents of Swamiji or Vivekananda's life and character. After Swami Bodhananda, who had been so long in charge of the society during the temporary absence of Swami Abhedananda, read and expounded passages from the Upanishads, of which Swami Vivekananda was especially fond. In the evening, Swami Abhedananda made an address reviewing the work and showing how Vivekananda, by organizing the Ramakrishna mission, had made a link between East and West. In the month of March, the birthday celebration of Sri Ramakrishna was duly observed. Reporting this function, the Society's bulletin wrote, "Since his return to America, Swami Abhedananda gave one of his finest lectures on Sri Ramakrishna. He spoke many times on previous occasions on the same subjects, but this time the speech was very illuminating. In the course of his lecture, the Swami said, 'The keynote of the life teachings of Buddha was active self-sacrifice, while the mission of Krishna to the world was to teach divine love. The great work of Ramakrishna was to bring message of harmony. He came not to reform, but to unite. He pointed out the wondrous fact that the religions of the world are not antagonistic in themselves, but that they are essentially one. Behind all religious doctrines and dogmas, the Master discovered one grand eternal truth. History has no record of such a saint.' It was from this time onwards that Abhedananda made it a point to present Sri Ramakrishna and his teachings to the Western people without any touch of supernaturalism. In his next phase of Vedanta work in America, he projected the sublimity of this spiritual character in a manner which was consistent with the scientific era. The year 1907 saw the birth of the Vedanta Summer House in Berkshire Hills. Reporting on the Summer House, the New York Evening Journal on September 14, 1907 wrote, "Up in the Berkshire Hills, not far from the picturesque little village of West Cornwall, Connecticut, and near Massachusetts, there is situated a most interesting colony of wealthy New Yorkers. Seeking seclusion that would be absolute and complete for the furtherance of the meditation that goes far to the achievement that their creed desires, there men and women have sought as a lovely place as could be imagined." But this is not all about the colony in Berkshire Hills. Here it should be mentioned that the Vedanta movement in America was then being conducted by 6 sannyasins belonging to the Ramakrishna order. 3 of them were working on the Atlantic coast, while the other 3 in the Pacific coast. Since his 2 assistants to help him in his work in connection with the New York Vedanta Society, Abhedananda made some changes in the works and activities of the society. As he took up the charge of the London Vedanta Society from the year 1907, he left the affairs of the New York Vedanta Society to Swami Paramahansa, himself visiting London once a year and delivering a series of lectures on Vedanta. Swami Bodhananda, so long in charge of the New York Center, was now spared work to other fields, and accordingly he took up the charge of the Pittsburgh Center. Thus, the New York Center was left to the care of Abhedananda and Paramahansa. Before his short visit to India, everyone concerned with the New York Vedanta Society had been feeling the necessity of having a secluded place where spiritual training could be provided to the aspirants in an undisturbed manner, which was not possible in the din and bustle of the city life. This is why, on his return from India, Abhedananda set his heart to this direction. It was about this time that the question of having an exclusive building for the society came to the forefront. At last, in the month of March 1907, a new house for the society and land for the proposed retreat was acquired. It was a 5-story house situated at 105 West 80th Street, with 2 rooms on each floor. The rooms on the ground floor were converted into one, which served as the lecture hall. Some of the rooms were let out, which fetched some income, which was then necessary for the maintenance of the establishment. The society moved to the new premises on April 25th. It was almost at the same time a far house at Berkshire, situated 4 miles from West Cornwall Station, Connecticut, amidst scenic grandeur, was acquired. It served as a retreat for the Vedanta students. The place lay at a distance of 107 miles from New York City, and it took about 4 hours' time to reach there. The new retreat at Berkshire Hills resembled Shanti Ashrama to some extent. Both Vivekananda and Abhedananda had in their minds to establish replicas of Indian forest retreats on American soil. The new peace retreat at Berkshire Hills consisted of 350 acres of land, surrounded on all sides by high hills. The old farmhouse had 11 rooms. The Berkshire retreat was duly inaugurated by Swami Abhedananda in March 1907. A picture of the new peace retreat is given by Sister Shivani in her book, Swami Abhedananda in America. She writes, "This ashrama in the Berkshires, 370 acres of rolling pasture lands and hills, a brook and several springs, 2 old New England houses needing only renovation and some remodeling. There are barns, a carriage house, and sheds, all made to fit the purpose Swami Abhedananda had in mind. The place, within a few years, was self-supporting. Feed for stock raised on the place. Fruits of many kinds and a splendid kitchen garden kept the table well supplied for summer guests who came and went the season long. The place was kept very plain, everything simple, and the Swami's routines for the workers mainly voluntarily and in line with the training and aptitudes. There always was to be found among the students someone who had training as a carpenter or knew something of the trades. The place was kept in good repair without hired labor. Always there was hard work to be done, always some addition being made, some project underway. Nothing ever seemed quite finished. Season after season, some project underway, kept going. If ever Karma Yoga maintained a school for study, such was here. Some of his early women disciples had their initiation at Berkshire Retreat. Sister Shivani was among them. Mr. LePage, one of his disciples, was for some time in charge of the place. On one occasion, it so happened that the local minister in West Cornwall asked Swami Abhedananda if he believed in a personal God. Replying in the positive, the Swami then added, and also in an impersonal one. And this silenced the minister. He requested the Swami to attend his services in West Cornwall, but the minister did not attend the Swami's services at the ashrama, and Abhedananda instead sent his delegates to hear the minister preach. This was Swami Abhedananda, strong, independent, and upright. But no description of the Berkshire retreat would be complete without any reference to Swami Abhedananda's own records. In his book, Leaves of My Diary, that impressive record which covers the years 1900 to 1921, he speaks, "It is impossible to guess at this distance of time the amount of labor which has been put to build up this place. Many worked almost tirelessly and selflessly to make that wilderness productive and beautiful. Indeed, the Berkshire Hill Ashrama had fulfilled one of my fondest dreams." Another Vedanta center came into existence in Boston, where Swami Paramahansa went in early 1909 on the invitation of a friend and started classes on Vedanta. From Boston, he started later a magazine called The Message of the East. Thus, it will be seen that in the course of less than 7 years since the passing away of Vivekananda, the Vedanta movement was in full swing. By this time, a large number of Americans, men and women, were drawn to the movement. The dimension or magnitude the movement had then acquired was all due to the leadership of one man, Swami Abhedananda. In June 1907, Swami Abhedananda left New York for London, leaving the charge of the society to Swami Paramahansa. Paramahansa was not proficient in English, and so Abhedananda had to engage tutors for him. He wanted every worker to be independent. That was his method, and this was the reason why he placed the responsibility on the shoulders of young Paramahansa. In his temporary absence, Paramahansa had to look after the affairs of the summer school at Berkshire Hills. Sister Nivedita was then in London, and as soon as she got the news of Abhedananda's arrival there, she came to see him. He began his lectures on Vedanta from the second week of July at different places in London. During his stay this time, Abhedananda taught lessons on yoga to many aspirants, and among them was Sir Henry Graham. The Maharaja of Alwar was then staying at the Hyde Park Hotel, where Abhedananda was invited by the Maharaja. Sister Nivedita used to come to his place frequently and discussed with him the problems of India. He stayed at London till the end of August, when he left for America from Liverpool. Sister Nivedita, it might be noted, was one of the direct disciples of Vivekananda, and she later became an earlier version of Mother Teresa, helping the Indian people to a high degree. Arriving in New York, Abhedananda busied himself with the work of the ashrama at Berkshire Hills, which he wanted to build up perfectly according to his plan. He also took up the entire responsibility of the Vedanta Bulletin, which he wanted to make as useful a publication as possible. The information relating to the activities of the different centers needed wider circulation amongst those who were being drawn to Vedanta in large numbers. It did not take Swami Abhedananda a long time to realize that Vedanta was now in full swing in America, and it was his plan and program to make that era a living force. The ripple that rose at the platform of the Chicago Parliament of Religions has now assumed a tidal wave, and the wave must rush on. That was what he desired now. Amidst all this multifarious work, Abhedananda had to deliver lectures on different subjects at the Brooklyn Institute. Henceforth, the Sunday lectures were conducted by Paramahansa. Towards the end of November, Abhedananda went to Lakewood, accompanied by Professor Parker, where he enjoyed a picnic by the banks of Lake House. His lecture engagements became now so heavy that frequently he had to go to various places outside New York to deliver lectures and thus to create new interest among the Americans towards Vedanta. One of the memorable lectures that Abhedananda gave in New York at the People's Forum at New Rochelle was on India under the British rule. This lecture was delivered on January 6, 1908 at the Theatre Hall of New Rochelle, and it was attended by a large number of audience. It was, in fact, his major political lecture in America. He spoke for nearly 2 hours, and everyone present was spellbound to hear the fiery harangue from the lips of a religious preacher. It was altogether a different Abhedananda when, in the course of his lecture, he vehemently criticized the misrule of the British government in India. Quoting authority after authority, both English and Indian, he exposed the hollowness of the British rule in India. Time and space were entirely forgotten as Swami Abhedananda uttered in his inimitable way these memorable words. Recently, I went to India on a short visit, and what I saw there in my own eyes was nothing but a political ferment and widespread discontent among the people of India against the unrelenting oppression and the tyranny of the alien rulers. India, since the days of the East India Company, has been bled white to make England prosper. The present-day political discontent in India is the result of decades of economic drainage. The British rule has no doubt conferred certain good on the people of India, but the wrongs and evils perpetrated by it outweigh that good in a shameless manner. As a result of this lecture, a meeting was arranged at the local bar association for the welfare of India. It was at this meeting that Swami Abhedananda came to be acquainted with such eminent people as Cuthbert Hall, J.T. Sunderland, and the Unitarian clergyman Dr. Wright, who were highly impressed with the personality of Abhedananda. Here it might be mentioned that years later, when Dr. Sunderland wrote in the pages of the Modern Review a series of articles on India, which was subsequently brought out in the book form under the title India in Bondage, he acknowledged that it was Swami Abhedananda's lecture on India that had inspired him to write this book. It was about this time that Abhedananda's book, India and Her People, was temporarily banned in India. Since his lecture at the People's Forum at New Rochelle, it is on record that Abhedananda had held discussions with many leading persons of America on India and the situation there. When the news of his political utterances reached Balur Muth, there was some repercussion among some of his brother disciples, particularly Swami Brahmananda, who did not like such political meddling on the part of a prominent member of the order, as he did not like Sister Nivedita's association with Indian politics following the death of Swami Vivekananda.